My name is Atul Kaul. I am a partner with Cognizant, responsible for the energy and resources industry for the Dutch market. I've been living in the Netherlands for the last 15 years. Before that, I was working and living in Spain, so predominantly in Europe all my life. Ed talked about Industry 4.0. You also heard about digital transformation. I'm sure this is not the first time you hear about digital transformation, about Industry 4.0, but I'm going to give you a perspective from our side, how we have seen that in action, how we have applied, and more importantly, what has worked and what has not worked. I'll share some experiences that we have. I'm going to talk about three things today. Talk about who we are as a company, what do we do in this market. Second, I'm going to give you a perspective on digital transformation from Industry 4.0. The beauty of Cognizant is we have a panoramic view of working across different industries. So we work not only with the bulk storage industry, the tank storage industry, but we have a view of the logistics, right, from origination to, for example, destination, and we want to share all of that experience and how we optimize the supply chain. And third, I'm going to give you two examples of where we have applied digital transformation from our perspective and share those cases with you. So let me get started. Let's see if this works. Yes, it does. All right, a little bit about Cognizant, won't spend too much time on it. We are a global IT services organization, globally working. We have about 318,000 employees working globally across different industries. We operate in approximately 35 countries. We have about 100 delivery centers, as we call it, and we also have what we call as digital hub or digital studios, where we bring in the expertise of digital innovation together with our partners, with our clients, with our customers. One of them happens to be in Amsterdam, so if some of you are interested to visit us, more than happy to have a conversation right after this event with you. What do we do? What do we do in this industry? So if I were to summarize, we focus on three main things. We focus on strategy, we focus on technology, and we focus on how do we make the new business models really operate in an industry. What do I mean by that? So if you are reimagining a business process, you want to reimagine how the workforce of the future should look like. How do you transform terminal operations? How do you transform your supply chain? How do you make sure you drive maximum efficiency out of your assets? That's strategy for us, and we do a lot of that work in the Dutch market, but also globally. Once you have the new business model, the important thing is, do you have, a lot of enterprises have technical debt, a lot of enterprises have their own technology stack. How do you modernize it? I'm going to also give you a perspective of how we see digital transformation and how you need to ensure that you leverage some of those learnings, for example, in your case, in your industry. And once you have modernized your core, you've modernized your enterprise to the new business models, you also need to make sure you have the business process that is supporting that change. So think of it, for example, automated. You have a trucker driving through a gate, for example, picking up storage. Can you automate all of that? That's a process change. You need to have new work instructions. You need to make sure all of that process works in your enterprise, and that's what we call as process automation. Of course, technology is there to enable all of that, but you need to make sure it works in your enterprise, for example. Most used word in our industry, but I'm going to also bore you with that. For example, hopefully there is some learning or two coming out of it. But let me give you a perspective how we see digital transformation. I know Ed talked about it also from an Industry 4.0 perspective. Modern enterprises need to master every layer of the stack. What do we mean by that is a lot of these organizations, and I'm sure you can relate to some of the horizontals in the stack. All of the organizations are going through, for example, cloud transformation journey. You also talk about we need to have better experience. We need to have, for example, a data-driven organization. Data is the new oil. You will hear all of those words. What we believe is if you need to do true digital transformation, you need to master every layer of the stack. If you index on one stack, you say, let's have a database, put it on the cloud, for example, more likely than not, it's going to fail. We believe you need to start with business value at the front and work your way through your organization. Uh, let's take an example. Let's take you want to transform your workforce operations to have right instructions for the workforce available to make actionable or to have insights that result in actions. You need to make sure you have a software that is curated. You need to make sure you have information, as Ed mentioned, not only data, but information that is presented to the workforce. You need to be able to make sure you have instrumentation in your tank storage. You have your devices that are collecting a lot of data, a lot of information. You need to have instrumentation across your, for example, construction yard, your tank storage terminals, for example, even your vessels, for that matter, or assets, let's put it that way. And it needs to run on a resilient infrastructure. Cloud, hyperscalers, but it needs to be a resilient infrastructure. And given all the cyber attacks, it needs to be secure. And once you have mastered the art of ensuring all of these stacks are engineered, we believe you can embark on a true digital transformation. Now that's a lot of stuff, but let me sharpen it down for 3 things to you. We believe when you are embarking digital transformation, you need to design or comprehensive design and adoption for change. What we mean by that is we are all humans. There are a lot of interfaces in the process. If a trucker is driving through the gates, you have the security, you have the gates, you have different instrumentation. You need to make sure you put humans at the center of it. We've been working, for example, for an agriculture post-trade execution company where the challenge is to do shipments of, let's say, bulk cargo from port A to port B. There's a lot of document exchange, there's a lot of information that is presented in emails, in Word documents, in PDFs, radio communication happening back and forth, but you need to make sure that information, that whole chain is assessed, and you need to design the system for the workforce, for the person in mind. Now, all of that is not going to be available in silos. You need to make sure the enterprise is there to support all of that information. And the change has to happen at the speed of agile delivery, for example. So in another case, and I'll talk about that in a moment, we implemented a new workforce instructions for a Nordics oil company, and the change was adopted in 24 hours. Now, that's the speed of your transformation that you need to think about. It's not about an ERP transformation 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, the change is there. The change has to be, the adoption of change has to be embedded in your program design. And we believe once you have designed your system with a human-centric mindset for your enterprise and ensuring that the new process gives operational efficiency, which is the stuff on the third quadrant, you have all the ingredients for a digital transformation. Now let me break it down further for you. You start with let's say digital transformation, but then where do you start? What's the next step? We believe you need to design your systems with a single digital thread in mind. So the example that I gave earlier, if you have a workforce or that needs to have work instructions, for example, and that system needs to be optimized, you start with the business value, do your analysis, your fit gap. Is your organization ready for that capability? You need to make sure that whole process is re-engineered. You can automate a lot of things, but bear in mind, the more you automate, the more constrained the system is going to be. You have to find the right balance. There is no silver bullet for it. If everything was automated in a terminal, the flexibility is reduced, as opposed to, for example, a fully ad hoc system where you can do anything, anytime, at any given moment. That's a fully ad hoc system, but you need to find the right balance in it. And once you have done the process engineering aspect of it, you've well architected. Do you have your data foundation ready, for example? Do you have the architecture that is going to support it, again, going back to the modern technology stack. But the story doesn't stop there. You need to design for the life cycle cost. I think Ed also alluded to it. It's not only about the project. It's not only about buying the car. It's also about running and maintaining the car. That's very important. So you need to design the system for the entire life cycle. What I mean by that is you need to have a value realization office, an office that is able to assess the features, the epics, the functionality or the process re-engineering that you have done, for example, for your bulk storage or a different tank storage company, is giving business value benefit. For example, what is the use of doing predictive maintenance if you cannot budget for it? If you still have spare parts sitting somewhere, if you still have to plan for predictive maintenance and you're not able to measure what's the benefit or the business benefit for it, what value does it give to a CFO organization, for example? We believe a value realization office sharpens that. Next to it is you need to have not only doing agile, but your organization needs to have an agile mindset. This is a traditional industry. We know that. Transformation requires a different mindset. But if you are embarking on a journey which is ambiguous, it doesn't have very clearly defined specs. There needs to be ambiguity, but then you need to design for agile. You need to design for it in your program structure. You can still have the phase gate mechanism. We believe that is still going to add value. You have, for example, your initial hypothesis, you have your MVP, you have your scale out, you have your production rollout. So phase gate mechanism is a good control mechanism for the organization. We believe that it works really well in practice. But within that, the organization needs to be agile. Are your terminal managers, for example, also having the agile mindset, or are they going to ask your IT organization, I'll see you after 7 months, hope we have a new system in place, and it works. The third thing is there will always be change. Do you have the program which is broken down into components and you can adapt to change? 2.5 years ago, no one thought COVID will hit us. There are macroeconomic environments right now across the world that has disrupted the supply chain. Is your program resilient enough? There will always be change. Are you able to readapt and focus, for example, on certain things which have more value? During COVID, there's a lot of storage, so the storage capacity went up to 95% in some cases, 89% in other cases. And now the storage, the stock levels are going down because there is more consumption in the market. Are you able to adapt for that change? That you need to design for that, you need to adapt for that. But if you have a program that is composed of value-based components, we believe you can adapt to change. I think I have 10 more minutes. Why Aston Martin in this whole digital transformation? Well, let me give you a perspective. For the Max fans, I'm sorry, but hopefully you will get the message. Cognizant has a full transformation partnership with Aston Martin. We are working to design the future of the car with Aston Martin. A lot of engineering stuff is going behind the scenes that we are working with the Aston Martin team in UK. Most of you would know the cost cap in 2022. The cost cap regulations in 2022 from FIA dictates that you can only spend so much money on your car, on engineering of the car. How do you maximize your performance with limited resources? That's very important. It's as true in the F1 industry as it's true in any of your industry. The resources available to you will be limited. I'll be very surprised if any organization has unlimited resources. How do you maximize your efficiency, effectiveness, performance, whichever are the KPIs that you are measuring in your organization with limited resources? We are doing that with Aston Martin. A car at any given point in time in any race creates huge amount of data. That data is stored in different systems. You'll be surprised. They have the same challenges with any other enterprise for that matter. How do you make sure that data is made available to the engineers who are working on the performance aspect of the car? There's a lot of wind tunneling testing that goes on. It generates a lot of data. But how do you make sure all of those data silos, which are in different parts of the organization, are made available to the engineering team at the right moment? How do you get the telemetry, for example, available to the operations team? This is all about engineering, but how do you make sure, for example, for the marketing team, how do you make sure you engage your fans better in a certain event, for example? There's a lot of data that is generated. How do you curate that data, and how do you make information available to that data is what we are working with them. And finally, about digital twins. So we are also working with them on AI ML models, real-time simulations of the track performance, the off-track, collecting past historical data, the current data to make sure the performance of the car is improved. Again, all of this, we believe, are ingredients for digital transformation because it will require you to have the business value at the top within the resource constraints that you have and designing or redesigning your process to ensure you meet the new cost cap regulations from FIA, for example. Let me now jump to two examples. I have, I think, about 8 minutes, so try to cover two case studies that we believe are relevant in the current context. It's a busy slide, so let me break it down for you. This is for a Nordics oil company. They have about 3,000 workers working on an oil infrastructure. These are massive infrastructures. At any given point in time, they had 3,000 employees, contractors, employees put together working on it. And you would not believe it, but the amount of time that is wasted in this was approximately 35%. They travel a lot within the construction site, often carrying heavy loads of paper. For those of you who are in this industry, these can be tedious work. And think of it traversing kilometers in a day. I don't know exactly how many kilometers. Carrying these heavy logbooks, recording timesheet, recording information is wasted effort. Our analysis showed that 35% of 3,000 construction workers' effort every day was wasted in non-value add, redundant activities. We took the business value at front, going back to the stack I showed, looked at their process, did a value mapping. Where is the effort spent? What is the information a construction worker really needs? What are they going to do with that information? And can we present that information to them in a meaningful way? What you see are actual screenshots over here, if I can point it. These are actual screenshots of work orders and information that is made available to those workers, which they don't have to carry huge amounts of paper. The information is actionable, but it's not about an app. The whole process was changed, right from the information, how do you use that information, and is there traceability in that information that is presented to them. There's no longer a need for registering timesheet. Everything, once a work order is executed, it's time-stamped. It's all recorded information. As I mentioned, you have to look from the entire stack. What's the value? What's the process? Are you able to trace that data and realize business benefits out of it? The project team actually, the targets that they had was reduce unwanted efforts, automate the tasks that could be automated, reduce the new work methods or create new work methods, and give the construction workers a new experience. So they don't have to carry huge amounts of paper anymore, but they have information at their fingertips. All of this was implemented. When the change was implemented, they were already onboarded in this whole agile that I talked about, initial value mapping. They were already on board. And guess what? When this new system was rolled out, we were not talking about 3 months of transformation, 6 months of change. It was all adopted by 3,000 workers in 24 hours. That's the speed of change. That's the adoption that we are talking about. let me shift from Nordics to Australia for a moment. This is about terminal optimization for analytics to operations. Let me give you some context. These are massive mines, huge mines. And this company, a mining company, is transporting copper, iron ore, nickel, potassium, you name the minerals from Australia all over the world. The organization, there were production targets were not met for this company. The management board, the executive board came together and they said, if we have to revamp our organization, make a $4 billion capital investment in this organization, where are the bottlenecks? The data was all over the place. So for moving materials, it's important because this is true also for the bulk storage industry, is follow your materials. So moving the materials from the mines all the way to where it was supposed to be shipped had more than 9 modes of transport. You had to excavate it. You had to put it on the rail cargo. And by the way, the rails were automated. There were no drivers in the rail anyways. So a lot of it is automated. You have to then put it on the loaders and then on the vessels. There were 9 modes of transport, and as they call it, zones. There were 4 zones, how they were managing it. A lot of information, or a lot of data rather, but where are the bottlenecks? So we did a cause and effect around it. And what we found out, and this is important, 2 things stood out. Number one, the constraint was not in the transport capacity. The constraint was in the delays. The constraint was, as Ed also mentioned, in the outliers. There were dumping delays, and the dumping delays were the critical points in the entire chain that were causing failure. So how do you identify in your transformation journey the critical constraints? We believe, and in this case it was true, it was not about automation. And the data showed that direct load can be automated to about 48 to 49% direct load, and that gave the maximum throughput in a production in a year. Any more automation, you constrain the system a lot. Any less automation, you still have waste in the system. So it's not about automation, it's also making sure you count for the exceptions. It's not for a truck driver driving through an automated gate. It's about that one truck driver who does not have the right paperwork, does not have the work permit, and causes a cascading effect on the delays. That's what you need to account for. We essentially, after this whole study, presented, and these are actual screenshots, sorry. These are actual screenshots that you can see here. That was the information available with the data science department, but you can't do anything. So we brought that information, and that's what you see at the bottom. Tangible information at the zonal managers, so they can take action. So they had a single pane of view of where my material is at any given point in time. Can I account for delays? Can I account for change in my work instructions? Because between shifts, there was very little handover that happened in the past. But with this information, there was no handover needed. The zonal managers had a full visibility of where the material is, and they could take actions to ensure the delays are mitigated and throughput capacity was met. Again, to summarize, you need to start with the business value. Start with the human-centric. So what's important for the zonal managers? Present them data that is meaningful, and make sure it all works in your enterprise. And finally, just to wrap up, we do a lot of work in the Dutch market. We are investing in new technologies. We work with TU Delft on tactile internet, the use of exoskeletons, for example, in hazardous environments. So if any one of you is interested, more than happy to have a chat. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.